I did something horrible that is unacceptable, and I realize that. But I don't deserve to die for the actions of 3 individuals.
Those are the words of Christa Gail Pike, spoken from death row. Finally, after decades of appeals, Christa Pike, the youngest woman ever sentenced to death in Tennessee, just 18 years old at the time, is scheduled for execution in 2026. Dubbed the Little Devil for the brutal murder of her classmate,
it is therefore ordered that you shall be put to death by electrocution in the mode prescribed by law, and that you shall be transferred to the custody of the warden at the Tennessee Prison for Women. And further, on the 12th day of January 1997, your body shall be subjected to shock by a sufficient current of electricity. May God have mercy upon you. Mr. Bates,
can I please have my mom before I go?
Stay tuned as we dive into the brutal crime, the path that led her to death row, and the final countdown to her execution. But before we start, let us know in the comment where you're watching from. This is Verdict Vault. Stay with us. Christa Pike's story begins long before the crime. She was born with neurological impairment linked to prenatal alcohol exposure. From infancy, there were warning signs, including early medical episodes consistent with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Before she had any say in her circumstances, her development was already compromised. Her mother, Carissa Hansen, struggled with alcoholism and severe depression. She drank heavily throughout Christa's childhood and attempted self-harm when Christa was very young. Stability was rare. Christa was frequently left with relatives for extended periods, especially during her earliest years, with no consistent caregiver or sense of safety. As she grew older, Christa was exposed to repeated trauma in her family environment and beyond. Multiple incidents were documented in later court records, yet meaningful intervention never followed. Attempts to seek help were brief and ineffective. Diagnoses were made, but treatment was not sustained. By adolescence, Christa turned to substances and experienced serious mental health struggles. She made multiple attempts to harm herself and was diagnosed with depression, but follow-up care never came. Conditions later identified as bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress were left untreated until she was incarcerated. Eventually, she dropped out of school and cycled through unstable living situations. Job Corps, a federal vocational program for at-risk youth, appeared to offer structure and a second chance. In late 1994, at 18, Christa enrolled at the Knoxville Job Corps Center. She completed her GED and spoke of future plans in healthcare. For the first time, there was the appearance of direction. It would not last. At Job Corps, Christa became involved with a younger student, Daryl Shipp. The relationship quickly became intense. They shared an interest in dark symbolism and fringe beliefs, and Christa later described him as the first person who made her feel protected. That sense of protection became central to her identity. When another student entered that emotional space, Christa perceived it as a threat. Colleen Slemmer arrived at the Knoxville Job Corps Center in October 1994. She shared classes with Christa and developed a friendly, non-romantic connection with Shipp. Friends would later emphasize that it went no further than conversation and laughter. For Christa Pike, that distinction did not matter. Jealousy took hold. The belief that Colleen was trying to take something she depended on hardened into fixation. Tension between the two young women grew with time, and Christa's focus on removing this perceived rival intensified. On January 5, 1995, 1 week before the crime, Christa Pike told fellow Job Corps student Shadala Peterson that she intended to kill Colleen Slemmer. According to later statements, Pike framed the plan within the belief system she shared with Peterson and Daryl Shipp. Over the next 7 days, Pike prepared. She selected a location, gathered weapons, and devised a false reconciliation to draw Slemmer into isolation. On the evening of January 12th, Pike, Shipp, Peterson and Slemmer signed out of the Job Corps dormitory and walked toward a remote area near the University of Tennessee agricultural campus. Pike told Slemmer the group wanted to make peace and offered marijuana as a gesture. Slemmer agreed. She believed the conflict was ending. Around 8 p.m., the group reached a secluded area near an abandoned facility. There were no witnesses. Only 3 of them would return. The group walked to a remote wooded area on the University of Tennessee agricultural campus, isolated from passersby and hidden from view. Once there, the gathering took a horrific turn. Pike and Shipp attacked Slemmer, stabbing, beating, and torturing her in a prolonged assault. Court records and later reporting indicate the violence lasted up to 30 minutes, a harrowing span of time that saw Slemmer subjected to repeated blows, cuts, and degrading mutilation. During the assault, Pike allegedly carved a pentagram on Slemmer's chest, a gruesome mark that compounded public horror at the crime. After the extended violence, the killers smashed Slemmer's skull with a large chunk of asphalt, ending her life. If you're watching right now and you believe difficult story like this deserve to be told with facts and context, please subscribe to Verdict Vault and help the channel reach more viewers who care about justice and truth. Now, let's continue. After the killing, Pike removed a small fragment of bone from the victim's skull and kept it. When she returned to Job Corps, witnesses testified that she spoke openly about the crime and displayed the fragment. Investigators later described her behavior as celebratory and unemotional. The next morning, University of Tennessee employees discovered Slemmer's body. The scene shocked investigators, even those with extensive experience. Within hours, police identified Pike, Shipp, and Peterson as suspects. DNA evidence linked Shipp to the crime. All 3 were arrested on January 14, 1995. Pike waived her rights and gave a lengthy confession, later claiming the situation escalated beyond her control, an account contradicted by evidence and witness testimony. In March 1996, Christa Pike, then just 20 years old, stood trial for her life. She was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, facing the full force of Tennessee's capital punishment laws. The prosecution presented Pike's own confession, forensic evidence, and eyewitness testimony as proof of both premeditation and aggravated conduct. The trial was swift. After only a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Pike guilty on both counts. On March 30, 1996, she was sentenced to death by electrocution for the murder charge and an additional 25 years in prison for conspiracy.
It is therefore ordered that you shall be put to death by electrocution in the method prescribed by law, and that you shall be transferred to the custody of the warden at the Tennessee Prison for Women. And further, on the 12th day of January 1997, your body shall be subjected to shock by sufficient current of electricity. Oh God, have mercy upon you. Must beg to get this pipe into the
Can I please have my mom before I go?
The judge's sentence made Pike one of the youngest women in U.S. history to be condemned to death in the modern capital punishment era. Her accomplices fared differently. Shipp, her boyfriend, who was 17 at the time of the killing and tried as an adult, received life in prison with parole eligibility for his role in the brutal murder. Peterson, who cooperated with authorities and testified against Pike, received probation after pleading guilty to being an accessory after the fact.
After her conviction, Pike was transferred to the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center, formerly the Tennessee Prison for Women in Nashville. Although death row is typically associated with male inmates, Pike's situation was unusual. She became Tennessee's only female death row inmate, housed separately from the male population. Her time in prison was not peaceful. In 2001, Pike was convicted of attempting to strangle a fellow inmate during a fight, a crime that added another 25 years to her prison sentence. That conviction underscored the continuing violence in Pike's life behind bars and became part of the broader narrative about her capacity for violence. In the years that followed her conviction, Pike's legal team pursued numerous appeals, both to state and federal courts, raising arguments about her mental state, childhood abuse, and the appropriateness of the death sentence for someone so young at the time of the crime. Documents and statements from her attorneys highlighted her history of severe physical and sexual abuse, neglect, and untreated mental health conditions, including bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, diagnosed only years after the murder. Those arguments, however, met with limited success. In the early 2000s, Pike's appeals were launched, canceled, and relaunched, sometimes at Pike's own insistence, as she alternately sought execution and then sought to pursue full appellate review. A judge once granted a brief execution date in 2002, but that date was later withdrawn when Pike's lawyers requested more time to pursue appeals. By the time the late 2010s arrived, Pike's attorneys had filed federal habeas corpus petitions and clemency requests, citing ineffective assistance of counsel and mental health grounds. In 2016, a federal judge denied those efforts, affirming that her sentence should stand. Appeals to higher federal courts were also declined, leaving Pike's conviction and death sentence intact. In October 2023, Pike's motion to reopen her case based on a Tennessee Supreme Court decision that juvenile sentencing laws were unconstitutional was rejected. The judge ruled that the decision applied only to juvenile homicide offenders, and Pike was legally an adult at the time of her crime. That ruling kept her execution on track.
From the beginning that I would be found guilty, and I knew from the beginning of my trial, that I would get the death penalty. I think I deserve to be in here for the rest of my life. I do, I know I do. I know I don't deserve to be out walking around with everybody else in normal society. I did something horrible that is unacceptable, and I realize that. But I don't deserve to die for the actions of 3 individuals when I'm only one person.
On September 30th, 2025, the Tennessee Supreme Court issued a death warrant for Christa Pike, scheduling her execution exactly 1 year later, on September 30th, 2026. If the sentence is carried out, Pike will break a long historical absence, becoming the first woman executed in Tennessee in over 2 centuries. The last recorded execution of a woman in the state occurred in the early 1800s, making this a rare and significant moment in capital punishment history. Pike's case sits at the intersection of several significant legal and cultural debates. On one side, supporters of capital punishment point to the horrific nature of the crime, the savagery of the torture, and Pike's continued violent behavior while incarcerated as reasons to uphold the sentence. Slemmer's family and many in the Knoxville community have said that justice demands the ultimate penalty. Some have even noted that the piece of Slemmer's skull taken as a souvenir remains in state custody, a haunting relic of the murder. On the other side, advocates for Pike's clemency argue that her youth at the time of the offense, her traumatic upbringing, and her later expressions of remorse and mental health diagnoses should carry weight in a clemency decision. They contend that executing someone who was just 18 at the time of a crime and whose psychological development was deeply affected by early life trauma raises serious questions about proportionality and fairness. As September 30th, 2026 draws closer, Pike's case remains a focal point for advocates on both sides of the capital punishment debate. Supporters of the sentence see it as justice finally served. Critics view it as a tragic outcome for a woman whose troubled past and youth were never fully considered. In the interim, one thing is certain: the legacy of Colleen Slemmer's death and the life that followed for Christa Pike will continue to stir deep reflection on the meaning and limits of human justice. If this case gave you pause, share your thoughts in the comments below. For more fact-driven stories that examine crime, justice, and accountability, please like the video and subscribe to Verdict Vault. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep seeking the truth.